Good morning, everyone, and welcome to worship at First Unitarian Church in Portland, Oregon. Our mission here is to nurture the individual spirit and together to strive for beloved community. There will be a virtual social hour after the service. You'll see a QR code on your screen at the end of the service that will take you there. In these days when our worship is back in virtual-only mode, here are some other ways to find connection and join in church activities. Seminary for a Day is coming up next Saturday, January 29th, and the Reverend Abhi Janamanchi will talk about doing the inner work of racial justice. This afternoon at 1:30 p.m., you can join the Interfaith Legislative Forum co-sponsored by Oregon UU Voices for Justice and the Interfaith Alliance on Poverty. This will be a chance to learn about justice initiatives for the short 2022 legislative session. And in February, a new series of anti-racism learning circles begin. These are great ways to learn while making connections with other congregants. Check out our weekly e-news or the church website to learn more about all of these opportunities. Today's service falls one day after the anniversary of the landmark Roe v. Wade Supreme Court decision that legalized abortion in the United States. As we await the 2022 Supreme Court decision challenging Roe v. Wade, First Unitarian joins Unitarian Universalist congregations across the country in dedicating our service to reproductive justice. On the evening of Tuesday, February 9th, Intern Minister Carter Smith and I will hold a gather-in for congregants interested in organizing for reproductive justice. If you would like to help us plan for that meeting, please reach out to me or Carter in the coming week. Our emails can be found on the church website and our bios. Please watch for announcements about the February 9th meeting for all congregants who are interested. Once again, welcome everyone. I will light the chalice here on the chancel this morning. And if you have a candle or a chalice at home, I invite you to light it now as well. We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love.
I see you, I hear you, I feel you. And though I can't claim to understand, I can stand still and reach out my hand and try to feel you. I feel you. I see you, I feel your tears fall from the same source as my own. What a mystery, and though I can't claim to understand, I am listening, I can stand to the sound of your heart, to the words of your song, and try to feel you. creating us together in spirit. You take this time, we shelter you all. Each and we choose to stand. And we choose and we choose to stand. And we choose and we choose to stand. I hear you, I feel you.
Today in our service, we will be focusing our energies on reproductive justice. Reproductive justice is defined as the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, to have children, to not have children, and to parent the children we do have in safe and sustainable communities. The term reproductive justice was coined in 1994 by a group of Black women who were carving out a space for themselves and the needs of their communities within the predominantly white and wealthy women's rights movement. We acknowledge this history and are grateful for their work to offer this framework to the world. It feels important to say this as I start this service. And there is a lot that I feel is important to say. Even in this moment, calling you into worship feels complex. I want to make sure you are ready for how difficult this conversation is. I want to make sure you know you can take breaks, you can take care of yourself in whatever way you need if this service hits close to home. I want to say that I hope this service hits close to home. It is commonly cited that 1 in 4 women will have an abortion in their lifetime, and trans and gender nonconforming people have abortions too, and everyone at some point will need to make decisions about their reproductive lives, and with that truth, every person has the potential to face challenges in receiving reproductive health care. I hope that this service hits close to home. And I also want to share that I am not speaking to you today as an expert, but as someone who has been on the periphery of this work for many years. We will do what we can to not get bogged down in shocking statistics and complex legal history. Learning in this way is important, and I encourage you to do so on your own time, but it is not what we come to church for. Instead, I invite you to bring your full self, to listen and be moved. We will hear from a variety of voices about their experiences, and I hope you seek out other stories as well. There are many voices, identities, and types of experiences that are not represented here, that we should also be learning from. I give thanks to all who have come before us in this movement. I give thanks to those who are sharing their stories and doing the work in healthcare clinics, in legislative halls, and courtrooms. As we enter into this time of worship this morning, may we feel ourselves bound together. May we gather open-hearted, tender, and ready to answer the call. Come now and let us worship together. Please join me now in singing our doxology, Spirit of Life. Our first video this morning will be a testimony by Carolyn Buell, a member of our congregation. She will share her abortion story as well as her story of joining the reproductive rights movement nearly 5 decades ago. This video was produced by her family members, Bill Smith and Dana Buell, who is the Director of Social Justice here at our church and is our worship assistant this morning.
Well, it was 1969. We were living in a dormitory. My children were 7 and 3, and I had had horrendous postpartum depressions after each of them. And despite using a diaphragm, I got pregnant. And it was just, I was just not willing to go through again what I had been through and to put my family through it. When I told him I just could not continue the pregnancy, he said, well, you could go to Planned Parenthood. But he said that with his back turned to me. And turns out it was not a clinic at all. It was only an educational facility. They asked me all the same questions about why I wanted an abortion and all kinds of intrusive questions. And they finally decided that they could and would refer me to the Clergy Consultation Service on Abortion, which I'd never heard of. So I went to see a minister at the Old South Church. I don't know what denomination it was. And he referred me eventually to a doctor in Montreal. There were 4 of us having abortions, and I was the first. I was hoping this guy was a doctor. There was a woman in a white dress and white shoes, and I was hoping she was a nurse. There was no anesthesia. My pregnancy was very early, which meant that it was more painful than it would have been a couple of weeks later. It was really painful, and I yelled, and he told me to keep quiet. And as soon as he had finished, I vomited up the soup I'd eaten. I did hear one of the women talk about having had an abortion before, and the doctor she named was my doctor who had delivered both my children. Imagine. Several months later, I again had a diaphragm failure and was pregnant again. But this time I thought, let's go the legal route. After all, I'm a school teacher. I'm a law-abiding citizen. So I called Dr. Sewell. He was agreeable, but the routine in Massachusetts at that time was you had to have a psychiatrist's approval that you would take your life if you continued your pregnancy. So I went for that appointment, which was very humiliating. I was energized. I was pretty furious about my experience. And I sought out a doctor at the Boston Lying In Hospital who was, I think, head of OBGYN. From somewhere I had the information that he was involved with a group of professional people who were planning in Massachusetts to have a counseling service to refer women to New York City once abortion became legal there in July of 1970. At the same time the New York law became legal, was implemented, we moved to Ohio. And there, I very quickly got involved in an abortion rights legalization group. There were 4 organizational members of this coalition. Planned Parenthood, of course, where we met, and that was the entity that had secured the funding. The Free Clinic, the Cleveland Women's Counseling, and the Clergy Consultation Service on Abortion, who was represented by an African-American Episcopal priest. So we talked to women who were desperate to have an abortion and referred them either to New York, if they could afford to go, or through this routine in Ohio. In New York, there were 2 very big clinics. I mean, they were seeing women from all over the country. And the one that we referred to was called Women's Services. It was started by the Clergy Consultation Service on Abortion, which was a national, really kind of an undercover ecumenical group. We continued until the law changed until the Supreme Court ruling in Roe versus Wade. There was a heck of a party that night at our house.
I remember it.
You were scared because it was a packed house. Everybody just came. It was packed, and you couldn't find your mommy. We were just in disbelief. We could not believe that abortion had just become legal. Like tomorrow it's going to be legal. And it was true that very quickly abortion clinics did spring up, and very quickly we discovered that they were not offering private counseling to every patient, which we thought was very important. And they weren't giving reduced fees to anybody. And a lot of women were seeking abortions because they couldn't afford to have a child. So we decided we had to jump into the fray and have an abortion clinic.
How is that for you now, sitting where we are in this moment in history?
How it is for me is really sad. I was so determined that my daughter should never have to go through anything like I went through. And to think that we are on the cusp of being exactly there once again is just horrifying.
So what difference did it make that there was clergy involved?
I think everyone would agree with my belief that the clergy were like the good housekeeping stamp of approval. They were the legitimizing force. It means a lot to me that Reverend Bill is staunchly pro-choice, and I was just delighted to know that he was a board member of RCRC, the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice. I could not belong to a church that was not pro-choice. I would hope that there are people within the church who would form a group of pro-choice people prepared to do whatever was needed. I was just listening to a podcast And John Lewis was talking about the struggle for voting rights. And I thought how important what he said is for reproductive rights now. That the only thing that ever did work was organizing and staying organized and being unwilling to be defeated. Do not give up. You just can't. Because the pendulum will come around again. It's bound to. Because it's right.
For the month of January, we temporarily pause our focus on climate justice to address the urgent need to protect and advance reproductive justice. You all know that the Supreme Court may very well overturn the Roe v. Wade decision, or at the very least, allow more than half of the United States to end access to abortion care in practice. We have selected the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice as the organization to receive our gifts. RCRC, as it is called, is a broad-based national interfaith movement that brings the moral force of religion to protect and advance reproductive health, choice, rights, and justice. It does this through education, prophetic witness, pastoral presence, and advocacy. It was my great privilege to serve on the national board of RCRC for several years during my ministry here in Portland. RCRC grew out of the underground network of ministers and rabbis that Carolyn spoke about in her testimony. The group was called the Clergy Consultation Service. In the years before Roe, those clergy companioned women in need of abortion services and referred them to abortion providers they had researched and found to be safe. After Roe legalized abortion care, what is now RCRC was organized out of that consultation service. Its mission? To safeguard the newly won right to privacy in abortion decisions. RCRC has long partnered with Black, Indigenous, and people of color women's groups, living into an intersectional approach to reproductive justice. For many years, RCRC was the primary voice working to encourage the Black church, particularly in the South, to embrace a woman's right to choose. Denial of access to legal abortion services impacts, as you know, most severely women and those who can bear children who are poor and people of color. I expected my service on the RCRC board to be a way to live out my long commitment to support women and those who bear children in the face of unfair limitations on their ability to control their bodies, limitations that male-identified folks would not tolerate for a moment. I thought I would be serving the causes of equality and justice. And it was that, but so much more. RCRC serves real individuals who make often difficult reproductive decisions, and the real medical and religious professionals on whom they rely. I got to meet some of those real people and hear some of those stories. And I had the opportunity to be on the inside of an organization that was on a real journey toward wholeness, living into the intersection of race and class and gender, not in theory, but in practice, while at the same time operating in an increasingly hostile public space. It was inspiring, it was humbling, and finally, it gave me such a hopeful sign that beloved community might not be an impossible dream. The irony, of course, is that today large majorities of the American people now support access to abortion care, unlike 1973 when Roe v. Wade was decided. But our divisive politics, they now demand that the lives of those who bear children be punished once again, despite the will of the American people. As we prepare for the days ahead, our support can help RCRC be ready to bring a progressive and intersectional voice to the defense and promotion of reproductive health and justice. They need to be ready, and we need to be ready. Your generosity is greatly needed and deeply appreciated. If you're joining this morning via live stream, you may click the Donate Now button on Boxcast or use the QR code that will soon appear on the screen. Thank you for your generosity. That generosity supports the mission of this church and our partners in the larger world.
This is the time each week where we share the joys and concerns of our community life together. You can send in your prayer requests to be held by our ministers and lay ministers to prayer@firstunitarianportland.org. And if you have a joy or concern to be shared with the congregation, you can send it to parishconcerns@firstunitarianportland.org. We have no individual concerns of the parish to share this morning. Today we send our prayers and love to the community of Congregation Beth Israel in North Texas, members of which were held hostage for hours last Saturday, beginning during their Sabbath service. We affirm that all people should be free to worship without fear or the threat of hate. We hold the synagogue's community in our hearts as they seek healing from the trauma and work to restore a sense of safety and well-being. This morning, we also share our lament that elected leaders blocked legislation to protect the right to vote, our fundamental right of citizenship. We honor those who continue to strive for our civil rights. Will you enter into a spirit of meditation and prayer with me? Please take a moment to settle into your breath and into your body. Let us notice this moment by taking another easy breath. Spirit of life and love, we give thanks for another day and another chance to be present in this faith community. There is so much that we all carry in these challenging times, from personal losses to social and political divides to the weight of global crises. It's a blessing to be able to turn toward each other and the love that holds us. Spirit, please remind us that there is refuge and love in the stillness of each new moment. Spirit of comfort, as we dedicate this service to reproductive justice, we ask you to accompany us. The decisions that we each make for our own bodies and lives can be very difficult, reaching deep into our emotional worlds, our relationships, our survival. Decisions about our reproductive lives and our body sovereignty are made within a wider culture that bombards us with messages of shame and stigma. Please accompany us as feelings flow and comfort us through any sadness, anger, or fear that may arise. Help us know that we are the best people to make decisions for our own bodies, our own expressions, our own identities. Help us to love ourselves fully. Spirit of courage, help us to be present for our personal struggles, for the stories of those in our community, and for the truths of these times. Help us to be guided by our principles of justice, compassion, and liberation, and work to dismantle oppression in ourselves and our institutions. Spirit of hope, please remind us that we are not alone, that our strength is in our unity. Help us remember that it is always possible to choose the power of love and the vision of beloved community, where the inherent worth and dignity of every person is valued. May we be comforted. May we be encouraged. May we act with hope for what is possible. And may we love with our whole lives. Amen. Let's sit together for a few more moments of silent meditation. Please join as we sing together, "Since What We Choose."
and what we love we yet shall be. The goal may ever shine afar, the will to win it makes us free. Since what we choose is what we are, and what we love we yet shall be, the goal may ever shine afar, the will to win it makes us free.
In 2019, 15 members of our youth ministry, YRUU, went on a civil rights journey to Alabama, Mississippi, and Tennessee to deepen their understanding of the historic and continued freedom movement led by Black Americans. In 2018, the Mississippi legislature passed the abortion ban that is now being challenged before the Supreme Court. And just 3 months before the civil rights journey, Alabama's legislature passed a near total abortion ban that is also being challenged in the courts. One of the YRUU members asked Nicole Bomer, who organized and led the journey, if they could visit an abortion clinic to learn more and show solidarity. The group was welcomed by Reproductive Health Services in Montgomery, Alabama, where the clinic director spoke with them about reproductive justice and abortion access. I was fortunate to be part of that civil rights journey and to visit the clinic as well. I was moved by the integrity and determination of June, the director who met with us, and was awash in childhood memories of being at the abortion clinic my mom directed. It was hopeful to witness this group of young people so engaged, deeply interested in the ongoing work to provide safe abortion access for all who make that choice, despite the ongoing threats. Nicole shared that later that evening, during their nightly reflection circle, some were emotional when speaking about the clinic visit. June had made a point to thank them for reminding her that there are people out there who care about their work at the clinic. One of the boys said, "She's thanking us? She's an angel doing amazing work every single day, and she's thanking us?" Hathaway Scarpine, a YRUU alum, was on that journey as well. Let's listen to her reflections about reproductive justice and Unitarian Universalism.
Memories that will remain with me probably for the rest of my life from meeting June were stories that she told us of how far people have to come to get abortions at their clinic and clinics that are kind of not nearby because they're not pretty spread out, but in the area. She told us that a nearby church pays this man who stands outside and shouts demeaning and hurtful things at people as they walk into the clinic. And the need for abortions comes from a variety of reasons. It can be personal health reasons or financial situations or the circumstance in which someone gets pregnant. There's not kind of like a blanket reason for all people that are going into a clinic. And so she really emphasized that raising a child is not something that's really easy to do. And if someone is choosing to get an abortion, they know that that's what's best for them. Those who are most affected by restricting safe and legal abortions are forced to find less safe or legal options if they feel they're not equipped to have a child, or they're kind of forced into situations where they know they're not equipped to have a child and don't know what to do, and are incredibly unsupported. I think it's incredibly important. I have gone to the First Unitarian Church since I was a baby all the way through my senior year of high school. And so I was in religious education my whole life and did all of our whole lives sexual education program. And something that was really emphasized kind of throughout my time in religious education was that everyone deserves control and rights of their body. And although many different faiths are not supportive of safe and legal access to abortion, the support from the UU churches and fellowships gives people a safe space to feel supported and understood in their decision that they choose to make. I think now more than ever, it's important to support reproductive justice as overturning Roe v. Wade becomes a clearer and clearer reality. All people who can get pregnant are entitled to what option is best for their body. And we learned a lot about that in OWL and kind of in all the RE classes, that you know your body best and you're kind of controlling your own body. So from a young age, the UU principles have taught me that each person has inherent worth and dignity and has support from the congregation and church leaders in their decisions. And I think that's something that I saw enacted throughout my entire time in RE. The fourth UU principle states a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, which I think is what separates Unitarian Universalism from so many religions, because that is something that's very real and something I definitely felt was very true. Not everyone is going to have the same truth, and people come from all different backgrounds into Unitarian Universalism. Something that we talked a lot about in our high school group was how people come to the Unitarian Universalist Church kind of after having poor experiences in other religions, and why it's such a supportive place and kind of a place where people can choose what they want to believe. And you can support someone else's beliefs and not have them be true for you. So with reproductive justice, you could support someone getting an abortion, but not want to get one yourself. And I think the importance of sex education is something that is really prominent in Unitarian Universalist religious education. And kind of all of OWL were taught of reproductive rights and justice, and why, birth control is important, or why contraceptives are important, and sort of how to have safe sex overall. So I think the continued support of reproductive justice not only will make its congregates feel more supportive, but also opens a conversation of the values and extends the UU principles into what is currently relevant.
One, two, three. I was dreaming in my dreaming of an aspect bright and fair, and my sleeping it was broken, but my dream it lingered near, in the form of shining valleys where the pure air recognized, and my senses newly opened. I wakened to the cry that the people have the power to redeem the work of fools. Upon the meek the graces shower, its decree the people rule. People have the power, people have the power, people have the power, people have the power. Vengeful aspects became suspect and bending low as if to hear, and the army ceased advancing because the people had their ear, and the shepherds and the soldiers, and they laid among the stars, exchanging visions and laying arms to waste in the dust, in the form of shining valleys where the pure senses newly open, I'm awakened to the cry. People have the power. People have the power. People have the power. People have the power. Where there were deserts, I saw fountains. Like green, the waters rise, and we strolled there together, with none to laugh or criticize. And the leopard and the lamb lay together, truly bound. I was hoping, in my hoping, to recall what I had found. I was dreaming, in my dreaming, God knows a pure view. As I lay down my sleep and I commit my dream to you. People have the power. People have the power. People have the power. People have the power. The power to dream, to rule, to wrestle the earth from fools. It's decreed the people rule. It's decreed the people rule. Listen, I believe everything we dream can come to pass through our union. We can turn the world around. We can turn the earth's revolution. We have the power. People have the power. People have the power. People have the power.
Before we go any further, I want to offer my deepest gratitude to Carolyn, Hathaway, Dana, and Bill for contributing to the service this morning, for sharing a bit of your story as part of this wider story of reproductive justice. I'm deeply thankful. In preparation for this service, I have been most blown away by the stories of real people acting bravely and insisting on caring for their communities, their families, and themselves in the face of real barriers. We've heard from Carolyn and Bill about the history of the clergy consultation services, a group of religious professionals who wanted to make sure that women could access abortion before it was legal everywhere. And have you heard about the group from the pre-Roe era called the Jane Collective? It was a group of women who went as far as training up a cohort of people to perform safer abortions in an attempt to prevent people from getting hurt from administering abortions themselves or going to doctors that had bad track records. And there are the stories of people receiving abortions in order to cut ties with abusive partners, in order to better give of themselves to the children they do have, and in order to offer their families dignity when a very wanted pregnancy will not be able to result in a thriving, living child. These are stories of people making decisions about their reproductive lives as an act of commitment to and faith in their future, a future where they and their families can flourish. And these people are committed to their communities as well. These stories are humbling and they are abundant. It is these stories that have brought me here today and have taught me that we all have stories to tell about our reproductive lives. We must talk about legal abortion and active to reproductive health care because they are facing tangible threats in our society and have been for many years. But reproductive justice is more too. It offers a broader vision. Reproductive justice asserts that human agency must be treated as sacred, as an inalienable right, especially when it comes to choices about our own bodies and how we create our families. And reproductive justice acknowledges that to assert our individual agency is always happening within the context of our circumstances, within webs of relationships. To see reproductive justice at work in the world is healthcare access, yes, but it is also to work on improving those circumstances, strengthening those relationships. Because I am a millennial who has benefited from the privileges of class and sexuality education and wonderful parents, I have grown up in a world where I have never had to worry much about accessing the reproductive care I have needed. I've trusted my parents enough to help me access contraception when I was ready for it. I've trusted myself and my doctors to have all the information needed to make these decisions. When I was living in Asheville, North Carolina during college, and I didn't have my own car to take me to get an IUD, my mother drove the 4 hours to accompany me so that I wouldn't have to go alone. And in Boston, when I had a reproductive health scare that my regular doctor couldn't diagnose, and I couldn't afford any of the specialists that she recommended, I knew that I could go to Planned Parenthood. I knew that they would be there for me. After passing through protesters and security guards, after spending hours in the waiting room, the clinicians there helped me, and with the utmost kindness. But I've always known that I got lucky to have all of these experiences. Even though I live in a world made better by generations of reproductive rights activists before me, I know we have a long way to go. Legality does not equal access, so there have also been times in my life of rallying in front of our nation's capital, of late-night phone banks with pizza at Planned Parenthood, and I have also been lucky enough to go through our whole lives, also known as OWL, the UU sexuality education curriculum that Hathaway talked about. Because of what OWL taught me, there have also been years in my life of accompanying my friends as they've made beautiful and brave sexual and reproductive decisions. We all have stories to tell about our reproductive lives, and in sharing our stories and in listening to those of others, we are reminded how interconnected we are. When we can be humbled by another person's vulnerability, by their bravery, by the way they come to know and trust their intuition, we can begin to see how no policymaker can be a replacement for someone's conscience. When we see pieces of ourselves in one another, compassion softens us, guides us. May we work to build a world where our culture and our policies embody this compassion as well. Humility and compassion. This is the title of my homily today because I believe these are the qualities of the Spirit that the movement toward reproductive justice is asking us to cultivate. As people of faith, we must get clear on what our faith, in particular, is asking of us. Though it may be tempting, we are not here to build our political platforms, to roll out statistics that point us toward objective truth, to explain the medical facts of the situation, or build our best constitutional law arguments in the name of reproductive rights. And we are not even here just to be a counterbalance to all of the voices that claim religious authority to diminish reproductive rights in this country. This is part of our work, but there is much more. We are here to connect with each other and that spirit of life that stirs within and among us in each new moment. To discern our truths with humility and compassion, to listen to the truths of others, and move forward into a shared, beloved community made real in this world. As Unitarian Universalists, we have a theology to articulate, good news to share that we, as humans, have worth and dignity, and we are a part of one another and we are loved. We dream of a world that honors these truths. The Reverend Rob Keithan, who is a former intern minister here at First Unitarian, and who is a leader in the faith-based reproductive justice movement, has spoken about this too. He writes, "What we have to offer is a theology of pluralism, a theology of love, a theology of liberation. Our theology says that all people have value and should be able to make decisions about what happens to their bodies. Our theology says that bodies are good, that knowledge is good, that sexuality is good. Our theology says that there is strength and beauty and imperfection, that diversity is a blessing, a part of God's plan even." This is what Carolyn was speaking about when she told us about the power of the clergy consultation services, providing her a safe space to go to access abortion care and to support the later work of opening reproductive care clinics. Religious communities can speak to the moral grounding of this movement in a way other institutions cannot. And as Hathaway talked about with her experiences in OWL, religious communities can shape the way we talk about sex and sexuality in our lives. They can teach us to trust one another, to make good decisions for our bodies. Our Unitarian Universalist living tradition grounds us in this way. Our 8 principles call us as individuals to know our value, seek truth and meaning, practice democracy, justice, and compassion, celebrate our interconnectedness, and work against oppression. Reproductive justice does this too. We want to trust each other to practice bodily autonomy and to trust our communities to affirm this and be places where we take care of each other and provide the care that we need. If someone asks you what your faith has to say about reproductive justice, I hope you will be able to give them an answer. We, people with different anatomy, people with different stories about our reproductive lives, have a role as people of faith to move into this calling. Reproductive rights are under assault in this country, and we have a long way to go to embody the vision of reproductive justice. There are people in this country who are loud and who wield power to create a world for us that denies the goodness of our bodies, the goodness of sexuality. They show us that we have a long way to go in building this beloved community. And so we are called to take action, to proclaim publicly, humbly, and compassionately that God is love. And not only does a loving God not want to send us to hell, a loving God also doesn't want people to have to risk their safety or their lives to make necessary, complex, and good decisions about their bodies. We all have stories to tell about our reproductive lives, about moments when we've made decisions or weren't allowed to make decisions. These moments change who we understand ourselves to be, shift the course of our spiritual journeys. And we have so many stories to listen to begin this work. There is so much work to be done. Will you join me? In our announcements this morning, Dana invited us to a gather-in for people interested in joining the reproductive justice movement here in our community. It will be in the evening on Wednesday, February 9th. We will offer spiritual grounding and a place to strategize about how we want to move in together, what this work will look like for us. If you've been part of this fight for a long time and have wisdom and energy to bring, I hope you'll be there. If you've been newly ignited and want to start out for the first time, I hope you'll be there. We all have a role to play. And now, will you enter with me into a time of prayer while I share words from Reverend Karen Johnston. Let us pray for our bodies. These bodies are homes. These bodies are our beings. These bodies without which we can never have inherent worth nor recognize it in others. These bodies without which we cannot experience the interdependent web of all existence. For it is through our bodies that we are a part of the self-same web. Let us pledge ourselves, the whole of ourselves, to the great collective liberation of bodies. Let us pledge ourselves, the whole of ourselves, to do the all that we can do to protect against gendered violence against all bodies, known and unknown, near and far, stranger or friend. Let us pledge ourselves, the whole of ourselves, to inhabit these bodies, to honor these bodies, to celebrate these bodies, to defend these bodies. So be it, see to it. Amen. And let us now join in singing our closing hymn, Keep on Moving Forward. We close with words from Elizabeth Strong. Seek for the spirit of life that is within you, that you may know more fully its power and its strength. Seek for the spirit of life that surrounds you, that you may know more fully its connection to you. Seek for the spirit of life that is within others, that you might enter more fully into the community that embraces us, this day and every day. This is the day we have been given. Let us rejoice in it and be glad. Go in peace, practice love. Amen.